Hey guys, welcome to Serial Killing 101. This is episode 3. In today's video, I want to talk about the serial killer Arthur Shawcross. Arthur Shawcross is a really interesting guy. His life and how he did his serial killing is pretty interesting, so I thought it would be a good choice for this week's episode. I actually didn't know much about Arthur Shawcross. I've heard his name before in the past, but once I dug into information about him and did the research for this week's video, I just had to do him as this week's choice. So without further ado, I want to talk about 5 things that most people don't know about Arthur Shawcross. Alright, so the first thing that most people don't know about Arthur Shawcross is he kind of had a weird run-in with the law. Okay, so basically Arthur Shawcross, and this is something that you can find in a documentary. At the end of this episode, I'll tell you about a documentary that you should watch on this man. It kind of goes all over the place with his life and how things had happened when he got caught with certain things that were prior to other things. And that'll make sense here in a second. But the first thing I want people to know about Arthur Shawcross is that when he first started killing was in the early 70s. This was after the time that he got out of the Vietnam War. His first victim that he was caught with was an 8-year-old girl, an 8-year-old little girl that he had raped, molested, killed. She was found under a bridge in Watertown, New York, with dirt stuffed in her mouth. Really, really sick killing. And what ended up happening was he was caught based on that murder. When they found him with the murder of the 8-year-old girl, they also looked into a case about 4 months earlier with a disappearance of a 10-year-old boy. Based on when they found the 10-year-old boy and the way that the murder had happened, they had linked him to the same murder. So his first victim, in fact, was a 10-year-old boy. Then it was an 8-year-old little girl. This again happened in Watertown, New York. The entire town was outraged because during the trial, he was given a lesser sentence from the killing of the 8-year-old girl. He was sentenced to 25 years to life. He actually ended up only serving 16 years for that. He was given a lighter sentence based on admitting to the murder of the first boy. The entire town of Watertown, New York, was in an outrage because of this. They felt there was no justice for this guy. And a lot of psychologists throughout his life said if he would have got stuck with the 25 years to life with these first murders, he wouldn't have went on and have killed as many people as he did. So that is the number one thing for Arthur Shawcross. The number 2 thing that most people don't know about Arthur Shawcross is he was always a sick guy. When we just talked about his murders of the first little girl and little boy, this was after he got out of Vietnam. In Vietnam, he claimed that it was the first time he killed and ate somebody. He was claiming that one day when he was on patrol in Vietnam, he came across a woman that was coming down a path. He took out his machete and cut her head off. And what he claimed that he did is he took the body to family members of hers or people that had information, and he ate the body in front of those people to make them incredibly scared of him and give up information. So that was one of the first things that Arthur Shawcross did in his life that kind of got him on this path of killing and not feeling bad about killing people. Even in the documentary that I'll tell you at the end of this video, he shows no remorse at all. I'll try to show a little clip here in a second, and you guys can check it out.
For almost 1 year, Shawcross killed no one. Then, in July 1989, police found the body of an elderly homeless woman, Dorothy Keeler.
Dorothy was found down on Seth Green Island on the Genesee River, and she was bones. So we really didn't know at the time why he killed her.
She used to live in my house, or my apartment, for a while.
Was she a friend?
She was, until she started stealing stuff out of the house. I asked her, why are you stealing? She said, I needed money. And I said, you have a bank account. I was paying her $4.25 an hour just to clean the apartment.
So she was thieving from you?
She was taken from me and my wife, Rose.
Does that warrant killing her?
Huh?
Does that warrant killing her?
Well, to me it did.
But Shawcross didn't just kill Dorothy Keeler. He would later return to her dead corpse.
And he came back and visited. He came back and visited, and he took her skull, her head, and threw it in the Genesee River.
After you killed her, you went back later to see the body. Is that right?
No, I went back to clean it up.
She was found with her head removed.
That's right.
How did that happen?
Easy, just pick it up and move it.
What, you just pull the head off?
Yeah, it was already off.
Shawcross had now murdered 3 women, but his blaze of terror had only just begun.
But yeah, Arthur Shawcross is just, there's something mentally going on with him. The way he twitches with his eyes, it's just, I don't know if that's just a reaction from the stress when he's being asked questions or not. Psychologists have said that when examining Arthur Shawcross's brain, that he definitely has lesions that are similar to other serial killers with similar lesion patterns on their brain. But there's just something about Arthur Shawcross that I don't believe. Most people know that serial killers are master manipulators, and they can say and do on command whatever people want to hear. Okay, if they want to claim insanity, they'll claim insanity, and they'll do it to the fullest. They'll act it out the entire time. But there's something about serial killers and Arthur Shaw in general that is just creepy, and I don't think that he is as crazy as people say he is. So that is the number 2 thing for Arthur Shawcross. Okay, the number 3 thing for Arthur Shawcross is, after Arthur Shawcross served his 16-year sentence, after being convicted for the murder of the 10-year-old boy and 8-year-old little girl, he got out. Again, people say to this day that if he would have stayed in prison, he might not have killed again. Based on this, Arthur Shawcross came out, he moved to Maine, where he was born, and then he came back down to New York again, not Watertown, but he was with his wife Rose, and they were just living happily, you know, with him out. I guess she stuck with him all through the first debacle of killings. I don't know why, but she seemed to have. And then he started going on another killing rampage. He started killing prostitutes in the area. He admits that he was a sex addict, that he took pleasure from hurting women. I think he was embarrassed about his killings of the 2 children in Watertown prior to his conviction, because he doesn't talk about it. Even in the interviews I've seen from him, he won't talk about it, he won't discuss it. So I feel like that's the only thing that Arthur Shawcross was ever really ashamed of. Everyone knows how bad it is and how much people are looked down upon being a child killer. And this is something that you can see in a lot of his interviews, but that was the turn for him. When he got out of prison, he started killing adult women, mainly prostitutes. He ended up killing 11 women and 12 possible women. He was never convicted of the 12th one, but he was convicted of the 11. Arthur Shawcross started to dive into cannibalism at this time as well. It is said that his first victims, the little boy and the little girl, he also ate their genitalia as well. But the first 3 victims, at least with the killings of the 11 prostitutes, he did in fact eat their vaginas. He said he did this based on the fact that because he was having sex with so many prostitutes in the area at the time, he was told through the grapevine that he had sex with somebody that had, one of the prostitutes that had HIV. He claims that he ate these vaginas and went on to kill all these women because he didn't know who it was that gave him the HIV. He claims he ate their vaginas because he was trying to get sicker faster from the HIV, because at this point in time he stopped caring. He stopped caring about his life. He figured he was going to die anyway, so why not do it quicker? So this is the number 3 thing for Arthur Shawcross. The number 4 thing about Arthur Shawcross that most people don't know is, during his 4th victim, his 4th prostitute victim, he actually just strangled her, and when he's going down a highway and just kind of booted her out of the car. She ended up falling down a hill into a little river under a bridge, and he left her there. This was around the time when he was just not really caring about his murders anymore. It seemed like he doesn't even care about getting caught at this point. But what got Arthur Shawcross caught with these murders was the fact that he would go back and see the bodies. He claims that he wouldn't do this, or he would only do this to clean up, but there was proof that he would go back to the scene to his victims to sodomize them, to have sex with them, to stare at them, to kind of enjoy the fact that he killed these women. So what had ended up getting him caught was he went to a site where this girl he had dropped off under the bridge, and apparently he was right like over the top of the bridge urinating. They say he was urinating, but I feel like he was masturbating. I feel like he went there to see his victim, to masturbate over the victim. What ended up getting him caught was he didn't know at the time that a helicopter was following over top while he was there, because they were looking for people that would possibly return to the site. They already knew there was a body there. Then they saw Arthur Shawcross there, and they kind of tied it to them. They're thinking, all right, well, we know this guy does come back to his victim's site. So he didn't put it together that there would possibly be people kind of keeping an eye on the area. Well, what ended up happening is they saw him there. They saw him doing the urinating or the masturbating, whatever it was, and they ended up following him. They ended up picking up Arthur Shawcross and interrogating him for 36 hours. Arthur Shawcross admits that he couldn't take he couldn't take the investigating from the FBI more than the 36 hours, that he just broke down and confessed to all the murders. Basically, the cops gave him a stack of photos from all the missing women in the area over the last few years, and apparently he dealt them out like playing cards and admitted to 11 murders. So they only had him at the time with 4 murders that they thought were him. He ended up admitting to 11 murders, and this is what makes Shawcross a really sick man. This was number 4 for Arthur Shawcross. Alright, so the number 5 thing of Arthur Shawcross that most people don't know is when he was in Vietnam, prior to all the murders of the kids, all the murders of these adult prostitutes, is he ended up having a relationship with a woman in Hawaii while he was there, while he was stationed, and he ended up having a child. It wasn't until about 2001 when his daughter finally came forward and tried to look for her father, found out that it was Arthur Shawcross, and would start visiting him in prison. This was 40 years later that this had happened. Arthur Shawcross only lived till 2008 when he died in prison, but he did have a last few years with his daughter and his grandchildren. He has 7 grandchildren from his daughter, and they would visit him, and they would send him cards and school reports, and he ended up having some sort of relationship with his actual daughter that he didn't know about after 40 years. Arthur Shawcross, till the day he died, showed no remorse over the people that he had killed. Again, with the fact that he started out life early at the age of 18, 19, killing people in Vietnam, eating them, practicing cannibalism, then goes and moves on to kill 2 children early, viciously, right after he gets out of the war, then gets convicted, goes to jail for 16 years, gets out, and then continues his killing spree of 11 people with no remorse. This makes Arthur Shawcross one of the sickest serial killers that has been around from the 70s and 80s. So Arthur Shawcross deserves to be looked at as one of the infamous serial killers of our time, and shouldn't be forgotten based on that. Now, I don't feel like we should glorify his killings, of course, but he's definitely one that people should be aware of. So I want to say thanks, guys, for tuning into this episode 3 of Serial Killing 101. Next week, we'll bring you guys another infamous serial killer.